Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Council, and also to all of our members here and also our audience that are looking in on YouTube, so welcome. May I first remind you of some domestic arrangements. The toilets are situated outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs, which you can see, hopefully. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent, please. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you are also consenting to be filmed by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for all webcasting and or training purposes. The Council members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Can I move to the agenda, please? Can I now ask the Corporate Manager for Governance and Civic Office to report any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. I have received apologies from Councillor Ayres, Councillor McCraw and Councillor Melanie Barrett. Thank you.
Can I now ask item 2? I'm sorry, Councillor Ward.
From Councillor Norman, he's not well and I've advised him not to come, even though I probably could do with his vote tonight, but it's best that he doesn't come.
I didn't see your hand up. Can I now turn to item 2, declarations of interest by councillors. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. I'll now turn to item 3, BC/221/7, to confirm the minutes of the annual meeting held on the 25th of May 2021 for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy? Thank you very much. Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Ward. And a seconder, please. Councillor Malvasi, please. Thank you. I will now ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, the vote is now open and will show in blue. Please click on the blue line to open the vote. Thank you.
Councillor Hinton.
At this juncture, I'd like to move a motion without notice that Council Procedure Rule 1.4 be suspended in relation to the motion on notice on the agenda proposed by myself. Council Procedure Rule 1.4, which I've moved to suspend in relation to my motion on the agenda, effectively requires that any motion to add to the Council's procedural rule be postponed to the next meeting of the full Council. In this situation, not suspending this rule would mean that the motion in my name would have to wait 2 months before being voted upon. While for complex and lengthy amendments to the procedural rule, it may well be helpful for the extra amount of time to consider the proposed changes, it does not seem necessary or proportionate to have to wait 2 extra months' time for my motion to be voted upon, given that it proposes only a very minor amendment and relates only to questions asked at future council. In light of transparency and democracy, I think it's important that we debate this motion as soon as possible. And I ask for a seconder.
So we're actually in the vote for that, and we haven't declared on that yet. So when we get to your motion, that will be the time that you move to suspend.
Chairman asked me to speak, so.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Jane.
Chair, can I just say that we have 27 votes for and 1 abstention for the minutes, so that is carried.
Thank you. Now I'd like to go to item 3, BC 21/8. Oh, well, I've done that one. BC 21/8, announcements from the chairman and the leader. They are for noting, and they are all, as far as I am concerned as chairman, they are listed there of myself and the vice chair on our events that we attended.
Mr. Chairman.
I now ask the leader for his...
Chairman, having invited me to speak earlier and now being told that it had to wait until after the result of the minutes had been announced, can I take my notice without notice to be valid and ask for a seconder for it so we can take it on the vote, or is it just being ignored?
No, you're not being ignored, Councillor Hinton. I'd just like to go through the list of the procedure that we've followed for years. That's with the list that we are looking at.
That's why it's called a motion without notice.
Would you please, yeah?
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, it's entirely at your discretion whether you wish to take this motion without notice immediately, or whether you would actually like to take it perhaps a more appropriate point in the agenda, which would be directly ahead of Councillor Hinton's motion. It's at your discretion, Chair, whether you want to proceed with that motion without notice now, or wait until a bit later in this evening's proceedings. Councillor Beer, are you indicating that you can't hear?
I cannot. I can hear you now. I could not hear Councillor Hinton's what he was asking for. I heard the bit about you wanted a seconder, but I don't know what you want a seconder to. So perhaps you can speak clearly. This thing behind me was playing up.
Chairman, my answer, Councillor Beers.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hinton. Yes, we'll take your motion now. Thank you.
Then, in which case, I ask for a seconder for my motion to suspend Council Procedural Rule 1.4.
Which is?
Councillor Maybury, thank you.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you very much.
Emily, I don't know if you want to read what the motion is, because I'm not sure.
Chairman, for clarity, would it assist members if I just clarify the motion that's been proposed by Councillor Hinton and seconded by Councillor Maybury? So the motion, which is valid as a motion without notice, is to suspend one of the council procedure rules. The council procedure rule that's being suspended is 1.4, which falls in the introduction part of the council procedure rules, and states that any motion, including a motion received on notice, or proposition to add to, vary or revoke these council meeting procedure rules, shall, when proposed and seconded, stand adjourned without discussion to the next ordinary meeting of the council. So the proposal is to suspend 1.4 to enable the discussion of the motion that appears later on your agenda. Chair, I would just say that obviously at your discretion you've decided to allow the debate and the vote on that motion in any case this evening. However, the council voting on this motion without notice does tidy it up, if you like, so that you've got a clear intention of the council as well of their desire to vote on Councillor Hinton's motion, which appears later in the agenda.
Councillor Arthur.
confirm the effect of that is that the motion will be put, debated.
Correct.
Didn't hear it.
Chairman. Chairman, if I can just come in at this stage. I'm conscious just reading the room and reading a few faces. I'm not convinced everybody understood what's being proposed or can hear. Yeah, so Councillor Arthey was just confirming that if this motion is passed, it means that when you then come on to deal with Councillor Hinton's motion, which is on the papers, that you will be able to debate it, vote and deal with it today. If you don't pass this additional motion, it will the motion on the papers from Councillor Hinton will simply be passed over to a future meeting, which is Councillor Hinton's concern. So without wishing to lead members, it would seem eminently sensible to vote in favour of Councillor Hinton's motion at this point, which enables you to deal with the business in one go rather than spread it out over 2 meetings. I hope that clarifies partly. In which case, go to the vote if Jan's ready to.
We'll go straight to the vote for this, but we'll just wait for governance officer to put it in.
Just wait to just get that vote up to suspend 1.4 of the procedural. 2 seconds. Once that's in there, we'll get you to vote. Thank you.
Coffee.
I think I got that.
Right, councillors, that vote should be there now and it should be showing in blue, so if you would like to place your votes, thank you.
Not there yet.
Chairman, can I just ask to be sure that we're voting on the right thing? The bit that's gone blue is to agree the motion on notice.
Yeah, it's the wrong thing.
That's not
Sorry,
what we're
that's
voting on.
No.
I've just voted on it.
I want to vote on that.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I voted because it was blue.
It's,
Can we just stop that and it's got
I just said,
to
yeah, no, it's the wrong one.
Easy.
The wrong one was blue.
not on notice, just received, yeah.
Come on.
That's, yeah.
Oh, Councillor Busby.
Just before we vote on this, the implication would be that questions would be allowed at the annual general meeting. Is that my understanding? Yes.
So not of voting on this. What you're, or the subsequent vote, which you're nowhere near on the agenda yet.
No,
then
that's
if you
true.
vote in favour of it, it would allow questions to be put at the annual general meeting. Yes.
That's correct. So the next annual general meeting will be
May.
May. So there's no rush.
just come in.
To some extent. I would suggest that we don't do this. We put it to the Constitution Working Group, the group that's there for this very purpose, and they bring it back to the next council or the council after that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order,
Councillor Beer.
I have already voted, and now you've come in at the 11th hour, given another point.
Voted on the wrong thing, Peter.
Pardon?
You voted on the wrong thing.
To agree the motion received from Councillor Hinton has got in front of me.
Chairman, if I can just come in and explain. Councillors, unfortunately we just had a slight administrative error where the incorrect vote was opened up for you to use. That vote has been closed. Any votes cast will be wiped. So when we come to that vote later on the agenda, it will be fresh and start from a clean slate. The vote that you actually need to participate in is about the suspension of Council Procedure Rule 1.4, and I'm just waiting for colleagues to indicate that that vote is available for you. At this stage, there should be no debate on items further on in the agenda. This is purely a vote as to whether or not the Council wishes to suspend that procedure rule. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emily. That vote is now showing to agree to the motion not on notice received from Councillor Hinton. That's down under if you scroll down, you will see that in blue now, and the other vote has been cancelled. So if you could vote on that line in blue, that would be great. Thank you.
Come up the wrong one again.
Motion on notice.
Yeah.
And then under that it says to agree to the motion not on notice.
Yeah, so there's 2 votes there now. So you're going to go for the one which is in blue. The other one is not going to work at the moment. So if you could,
So we're voting not on
if you could
notice.
vote to agree the motion which has been received not on notice, that is what you're voting for.
Let's go back to Endeavour House.
Yeah, mate, open.
Was it?
Councillor Beer.
Could I ask the motion to agree to the motion not on notice received from Councillor Hinton? Is this the one that you're requesting that we suspend rule?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Councillor, that's the one that you need to vote on to
Thank you.
suspend 1.4 on the Constitution.
Right, so I'll go into that. One minute. Performance.
Going to be a long night. I think we should send out for fish and chips.
In the normal
Chair,
way.
Chair, that has been carried.
I didn't.
Thank you. Yeah, that notice has been carried. Thank you. Right, can I get back? Where do I need to get back to? The yeah, right. Right. We'll now go on. Apologies to you members. We'll go back to BC 21.8. I've given my comments for noting only, and I'll now turn to Councillor Ward. Have you anything to report?
I know that many of you are unhappy that we are yet again having to hold a council meeting here at Worsted, and I do share your frustration. Whilst we welcome the relaxation of social distancing measures as we all begin to learn to live with COVID, we are, however, mindful of the current levels of local and national infection, and therefore the need to remain vigilant and protect against the spread of infection still remains. In the workplace, which includes council meetings, there is specific government guidance which we still need to adhere to. Some councils in Suffolk have cancelled their meetings this month as a result of the challenge of adhering to that guidance. We've taken a proportionate approach, as democracy needs to not just be done, but seen to be done. We are therefore meeting to deal with motions, questions and urgent items of business. But in order to do so, we have had to hold the meeting here again. Whilst it is great to be meeting in person, we will of course return to Endeavour House once the relevant guidance permits, and we should be back to normal for our next meeting in September. I think we are all surprised and pleased that there has been an unexpected quick turnaround in the rising infection numbers of the Delta variant in this third wave of COVID. This gives further optimism that the vaccination programme, coupled with a pragmatic response by the public in continuing to observe some restrictions and protection measures, are really bringing the virus under long-term control. Here in Babergh, cases have also started to decline in recent days, and while still the highest in the county, they are below the East of England and national figures. Infections are still mostly in the 15 to 29 age group, but it is worrying that this group is showing increasing resistance to campaigns to get vaccinated. It does seem that relentless online disinformation, especially the particularly pernicious claim that the vaccines affect fertility, is having an impact, even among the well-educated. We councillors must do our best to support the government's message and constantly promote the benefits and efficacy of the vaccination programme for all age groups. On behalf of the Local Outbreak Engagement Board, I urge continued caution and the need for all of us to jab, test and protect the rest. We should still choose to wear masks, use sanitisers and respect social distancing. In the words of our soundbite, this summer we need to spread kindness, not COVID. A lot has been happening over the past 2 months since we last met, and you will have all seen the announcements that demonstrate that we are delivering on all of our strategic priorities. I'm particularly pleased about the shortlisting of the Housing Solutions team for a National Community Heroes of the Year award by the local government magazine, the Municipal Journal. This is a fitting recognition for Heather Tucker, who has done so much for us and will be leaving soon to be the Head of Housing at East Suffolk Council. She goes with our heartfelt thanks and best wishes for the future. The other announcement I am excited about is the Innovate Local programme to support business innovation on our high streets. Business owners who would like to showcase their business on a market stall can be part of the pilot Innovate Local scheme at Hadley and Stowmarket. They will benefit from a free pitch at either market for a set period, along with advice, training and support before and after the pilot. The first participant in Hadley has already signed up and will start trading on the 6th of August. In addition to the market stalls, the programme will be opening an innovation hub in Eye and a pop-up hub in Sudbury later this year. These hubs will provide small businesses with access to a workspace, mentoring programme, as well as advice and training. The hubs are being delivered in partnership with the Innovation Labs, and businesses will also be able to use Innovation Labs' collective working space based in Stowmarket. Our carbon reduction management and biodiversity action plans are underway, with funding approved for a new water filtration system at the Kingfisher Pool, biodiversity mapping and a tree canopy survey. We have also just agreed to the completion of the project to replace streetlights in the district with LEDs, replacing the remaining 14 units. And this will be funded from the Climate Change and Biodiversity Reserve. And finally, it is great news that our districts will host the final stage of this year's Women's Tour on the 9th of October. The world's top female cyclists will pass through Long Melford, Sudbury, the Waldingfields, Bilderston, Wattisham Flying Station and Stowmarket on their way to the finish line in Felixstowe. Well, that was going to be my final announcement, but hot off the press today, I have just been informed that the 2019-20 accounts were signed off yesterday. There have been audit delays outside of our control, which have affected other local authorities as well, but we have finally got there. Thank you, Chairman.
Even, aren't we? I said we're very proud to have it going through Glemsford as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'm sorry. It'll probably be slow through Glemsford. It's uphill in Glemsford.
Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the leader very kindly email all councillors his report, please? Because I only heard the second part. Very sorry. Not hear the first part at all. Thank you.
Oh, didn't the PA system...
They're breaking up.
Can't hear a word, sorry.
No, I didn't hear what you said. I will do that, Councillor Maybury.
I think it's over there.
Have you finished, Councillor?
Yes.
Thank you. So I'll just move on if there are no other points of clarification to be raised. No. Thank you.
I don't think they can hear you. I don't think the microphone's on.
Item 6. Item 6, members.
Quick. You might need to point that nearer, but also I don't know they can hear you. I think you might need to move the microphone nearer because they can't hear you.
Oh, my microphone as well.
I know.
How's that? How's that? I thought it was all right the first time. Thank you, members. Questions on item 6. Questions by the public in accordance with council procedure rules. I refer to the question in the tabled papers. We have received a question from Mr Morelli to Councillor Holt, Cabinet Member for Economic Growth. Mr Morelli, could you please come forward to the lectern and ask your question?
Thank you. On the 5th of July 2021, the Babergh Cabinet debated a report on Belle Vue Park in Sudbury, the recommendations from which the Council will consider today at agenda item 11A of today's meeting. Prior to that Cabinet debate, Councillor Lindsay asked a question regarding the contract the Council has agreed with Churchill Retirement Living. In his question, Councillor Lindsay pointed out that Babergh District Council will not be paid by Churchill until and unless Churchill is granted planning permission for the works it intends to carry out. In addition, Councillor Lindsay stated that, under the contract agreed with Churchill, Babergh does not have to start work on the retaining wall until that time. Councillor Lindsay therefore asked why money to pay for the retaining wall needed to be borrowed before Churchill receives planning permission, should that occur, and therefore before the contract with Churchill completes and the council is paid. In response, Councillor Holt stated that borrowing money in advance of contract completion was necessary because, to use Councillor Holt's own words, if Babergh does, quote, not start this work prior to completion of the Churchill contract, Babergh will have insufficient time to meet the contract obligations to start on the site within 3 months. I therefore understand that, in essence, Babergh has signed up to a contract that requires it to borrow money before Churchill has even received planning permission for its intended development again, should that occur. Could I therefore ask Councillor Holt, in his position as Cabinet Member for Economic Growth, if I'm correct in the understanding that I've described, why was a contract agreed that necessitated Babergh borrowing money prior to the said contract's completion, from which funding is intended to be provided, especially given that there is no guarantee Churchill will receive planning permission for its development at all?
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Holt, the member for Cabinet Member for Economic Growth, to respond, please?
No. Yeah? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The forward funding element proposed is predominantly to carry out design work, pre-build contract, site studies and other work to enable construction to start on site within the timescales proposed in the contract with the purchaser.
Thank you, Councillor Holt.
Supplementary.
Mr. Morelli, have you a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you.
Can I just say that it needs to have a question on the question you first asked, and it must be directly related and must not be preceded by a statement.
Must not be preceded by a statement.
Couldn't hear what he said.
The initial version of the Cabinet report had a risk with an impact level of 4 catastrophic. However, that risk was downgraded prior to the Cabinet meeting to read 3 bad. Email correspondence...
Mr. Morelli.
I'm afraid, if I just ask my question, it'd make no sense because it needs the context. Otherwise, it'd make no sense. Is it all right to make a brief statement beforehand to provide context to the question?
I want a direct question, Mr. Morelli, please.
There is no provision within Council Procedural 12.8 that requires that there be no statement beforehand to provide context.
I require a question on the supplementary. We've always, in my time, always worked with that, and therefore...
When I previously asked a question at the last meeting, which was 2 meetings ago, I was permitted to make a brief statement beforehand to precede my supplementary question. So I don't understand why this has changed.
If you can't ask the question, I would suggest that you relate it directly to what you've already asked, please.
Okay. So my original question was on Belle Vue, the report of which, the recommendations from which is before the council today. Again, as I've said, the risk impact was previously rated as 4 catastrophic and is now 3 bad. Email correspondence has not fully ascertained why the risk that was previously described as 4 catastrophic does not still exist and has been removed. So could I therefore ask Councillor Holt if he could provide me with a full and complete explanation as to why the risk was downgraded from 4 catastrophic to 3 bad?
Thank you. Councillor Holt, would you like to respond, please?
I think what I'd like to say is that in the earlier draft report, it had an incorrect risk rating. as this was an administrative error. So the risk was not downgraded.
Thank you, Councillor Holt, for that response. And I can move on to the next item. Questions by councillors in accordance with council procedure rules. I refer to the questions in the tabled papers. I would like to invite Councillor Hinton to ask his questions.
Are we working again here yet? No?
Can't hear him.
On here.
Done. Are we working now?
Yes.
I think so. The first.
Come here. Pull it right close, John. Pull it close to you.
My first question, based on the Secretary of State's decision on the matter of Swaydale Council versus Quinn Estates Limited and Mulberry Estates Sitting Board Limited, concerning the conditions and matters of their planning decision concerning, in particular, climate change, what is the relevance of this Council's decision to declare a climate emergency in respect of any meaningful actions that we can take to help achieve any result? And how can the Cabinet's decision to spend thousands of pounds on an audit of trees in the district have any relevance?
Thank you. I would like to invite Councillor Malvasi, to Cabinet Member for Environment, to respond.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The climate emergency the world faces is so immense and thoroughly entwined that in every decision we make as human beings, it will not be solved solely by planning legislation. It will be tackled by each and every one of us, you, me, our communities, our businesses, all taking responsibility for the emissions that we create and doing what we can to reduce them. Of course, our emerging local plan pushes us further towards this goal, and this Council will continue to push further where we can, just like we're doing in other areas, moving our fleet to hydro-treated vegetable oil, decarbonising our leisure centre buildings, piloting a water filtration system at Kingfisher Leisure to reduce water usage and reduce energy consumption, building a solar carport, moving to green energy tariffs, investing in energy efficiency initiatives for our council homes, creating an energy prospectus for Suffolk, and focusing on sustainable travel. These are just a few. And in answer to the second part of your question, however, this Council also recognises that the increasing pace with which natural habitat is being lost, that it too has now become a biodiversity emergency. We set up a biodiversity task force in July 2020, and while it would have been easy for the group to consider many ambitions, they acknowledged that the focus should be on achievable actions, those actions over which they have control or influence. These centred on understanding and enhancing the wildlife corridors, enhancing the Council's arboricultural, I have difficulty with that one, environmental resources and expertise. Trees provide a multitude of benefits to us all, personally and environmentally. While some of the social and aesthetic benefits can be difficult to measure, there are tools which help quantify and value some of the environmental benefits provided by trees, including carbon storage, carbon sequestration, stormwater reduction, and don't we need it now, pollution removal. But we have limited data on the number of trees that we have on Babergh land. The current estimate is somewhere in the region of 10,000 trees, and even less information about the trees that cover the rest of the district. Our tree officers are managing an incredible natural capital asset, but until now, we've had no way of quantifying what the combined asset is worth in terms of financial value, or what the trees are providing us with an ecosystem service. The tree canopy survey work will give us a complete picture while also making the information easily available for all to see and understand.
Thank you, Councillor Malvesi. Councillor Hinton, have you a supplementary question?
Have, Mr. Chairman. Will the Council be writing to the Prime Minister to declare that his ambition of carbon zero by 2030 is unobtainable given the restrictions in place on local efforts to improve carbon efficiency in planning decisions in particular, and the willful destruction of trees which move and store carbon dioxide? And when you're referring to trees on council land, there's a piece of council land in my village with a tree on it, which the council is proposing to chop down so that they can give the piece of land to the housing association and it'll be easier for them to cut the grass. Now, if that's not willful destruction of a carbon soak, I don't know what is. Old trees cannot be replaced with the same efficiency of carbon reduction by new whips, no matter how many are planted. There's been items in the press recently about net zero buildings council to help curb housing emissions.
Councillor Hinton, I think you've asked your question. I think you've asked your question.
If building regulations were changed, the planning committee could ask people to put in heat source pumps, solar panels and more climate effective measures.
Thank you, Councillor Hinton. Councillor Malvesi, would you like to respond to that?
Thank you very much. There are essentially two parts to your question, if I'm not mistaken. One is building regulations, which we as a council cannot write. We would love to rewrite them, but we will definitely lobby, and it's currently happening, that the building regulations do come through with an amendment. But your second question was that you've got a tree and threatened to be demolished, and I would suggest that you email me with the details of that situation, and I will take it up and see if I can save the tree.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Malvesi. I'll now invite Councillor Hinton to ask his second question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it correct that the joint legal teams have contracted out the negotiation of S106 planning notices to an independent company, and if so, when and who conducted the competitive tendering process?
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Councillor Arthey, Cabinet Member for Planning, to respond.
For the question. The answer to your question is no. Negotiation of Section 106 planning notices has not been contracted out to an independent company. Sometimes our legal service outsources the drafting of Section 106 agreements to external solicitors due to resource issues, such as when other urgent matters need to be prioritised. If Section 106 agreements are outsourced, there is no cost to the authority, so there is no requirement to undertake any tendering process.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. Councillor Hinton, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman. Is the Council aware that there has been a transfer of legal expertise from the joint legal team to the outside contractor as a result of this action? And is the Council aware that the fees charged for producing these 106 agreements, which local builders are forced to pay, have increased by 50%, making smaller builders in particular less competitive in the market and reducing the choice for our future and existing residents?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you,
would you like to
Hinton.
respond to that?
I can't answer what the whole of Council are aware of, I'm afraid, but if he's asking me, am I aware that the costs associated with the drafting of these agreements by outsourced solicitors is higher than it would be if it was done in-house, the answer is yes, I am aware.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. I'd now like to invite Councillor Dawson to ask her question, please.
Resident, sorry, can you hear me? Yes. A local resident received planning permission for the erection of a single-storey rear extension for an application registered March 2020. The development was permitted on condition it was begun no later than the expiration of 18 months from the date of the permission. I'd like to ask Councillor Arthey, can you advise if there have been any amendments due to COVID-19 to Section 91 of the Town and Country Planning Act, as amended, that can give applicants relief from this timescale? If you could please clarify, because I understand residents' applications have to be reapplied and submitted again when the application expires.
Thank you, Councillor Dawson. Councillor Arthey, would you like to respond, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Dawson, for the question. I know that I'm only required to read my written answer word for word, but this is a question that refers to a specific case. And had you given me the details of that, I would have been able to give an answer to the specific. So the answer to the first part of your question is no, but the Business and Planning Act 2020 did provide temporary modification to the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 and the Planning, Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act of 1990 to enable certain permissions which had lapsed or were due to lapse during 2020 to be extended. This was in recognition of the effect coronavirus has had on planning and construction, and in particular the delays around commencement of new development. I'll give you the details of that. Unimplemented planning permissions with time limits for implementation lapsing between the 19th of August 2020 and the 31st of December 2020 were automatically extended to the 1st of May 2021. Unimplemented planning permissions with time limits for implementation which lapsed between the 23rd of March 2020 and the 19th of August 2020 also had time limits extended to the 1st of May 2021, provided an additional environmental approval process was followed. Outline permissions were also extended in the same way, whilst the deadline for submission of reserved matters, which would have been due between the 23rd of March 2020 and the 31st of December 2020, was extended to the 1st of May 2021. The legislation only applied to these specific periods, and there has been no change to the statutory time period for the commencement conditions that we apply. The answer to the second part of your question is yes. If no work has been done that constitutes implementation of a consent, another application would be required on expiry, or the planning permission will lapse. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. Councillor Dawson, would you like a supplementary question, please?
Yes, I would actually. Well, my supplementary question then is, in February 2019, the Acting Chief Planning Officer recommended planning consent.
Just a moment, Mr. Councillor Dawson. Could we get the volume
Can you
up?
hear? Sorry, in February 2019, the Acting Chief Planning Officer recommended planning consent be authorised to grant listed building consent for the Babergh offices at Corks Lane, subject to the number 1 condition stated a standard time limit. This is a major condition put forward by myself at the time, which was that building works would commence no later than 18 months from the date of permission granted. It has not commenced work within the timescale, being June the 11th, 21, and this has been confirmed by Councillor Ward and minuted at recent meetings. Therefore, I think in light of this, can you confirm that the Corks Lane development will not be exempt from breaching a major condition, as no amendment has been made under the Section 91 of the Town and Country Act? And I think now, as we have a Rainbow Cabinet, I'd like to see Councillor Arthey as the Cabinet Member for Planning and Councillor Plum as Chair of the Planning Committee. Please can you give a personal assurance to take responsibility for ensuring this application will be resubmitted and returned to committee as soon as possible, as all other applications from local residents will have to be. Any further delay will cause further financial costs in respect to the security, etc., which have already exceeded probably 300,000 since we vacated in 2015.
Thank you, Councillor Dawson. Councillor Arthur, would you like to respond to that?
I can't really answer that question here and now. The reason being that I will have to check the date of the decision, I will have to check the conditions attached to that decision, and I will have to check the date of expiry. So I can give you a written answer after the, well, not immediately after the meeting, but out of meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Arthur. Right.
Your response, I think, would be quite useful. Thank you.
Right. Yep, that one we're done with, Councillor Arthur. The response to all. Yep. Thank you. I'd like to now turn to item 8, Overview and Scrutiny Committee Report. And I'd like to invite Councillor McLaren to introduce the paper BC 21/9, which is for noting. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
No.
No.
Lisa, here.
Right. Yeah.
Do I go through it?
Thank you, Chair. And members, you have in front of you the report from the Babergh Overview and Scrutiny Committee. However, before I invite any questions, I need to apologise for a footnote that I should have added at the bottom of the report in relation to the meeting that was held in June. And that's an oversight on my part, and I'm sorry it's not there in a formal presentation, but hopefully it will be recorded in the minutes of this meeting. You need to be advised that the meeting on that day ended at 1:27 p.m. as the Babergh Overview and Scrutiny Committee became inquorate. And so all items that were remaining on the agenda were transferred and considered at the July meeting. If you wish to see the details of that meeting, obviously the minutes are on mod.gov and on the website. So if anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. The members will note, please, that any question, well, not questions as such, but it must be for, clarification only. So any of the the comments made to Councillor McLaren must be for clarification. Thank you. Are there any? Oh, sorry, Councillor Lindsay.
Yes, Chair. Yes, thank you.
Is this for clarification?
Clarification, yes. And it may be that I quite understand if Councillor McLaren cannot clarify this, but I think it needs to be asked anyway, because the item on CIFCO you mentioned in your report. I did watch that on YouTube, and there was a question about what happened. CIFCO are withholding £1.5 million in interest payments from us over the next 3 years, and the question was asked about when do we get it back and what guarantee we have that we get it back. And the officer gave an answer, but I didn't really understand the answer. There appears to be no guarantee that we'll get it back, and something about being converted to debt, but I may have got that wrong. It may be that I need the officer to come back on that. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, that's wise, Councillor Lindsay. I think Councillor McLaren would not have those answers to clarify that. So ask the officers. Thank you. If that is all... Oh, yeah. Sorry, Councillor Dawson. Is this clarification?
Sorry?
Is this a clarification of the overview and scrutiny?
Well, it's just one. I'd like to make a comment about one of the points on here. I was on the scrutiny that day that I think needs addressing and clarification to members in the council here. Is that acceptable?
Couldn't hear that.
I'd like to seek clarification. I was on the overview and scrutiny, and I think there's a point here, 1.5 of the overview and scrutiny that ought to be brought to the members' attention here, that's on here. 1.5 says there ought to be an increased use of task and finish groups to be adopted by the committee. And I sort of felt that on that particular day, the issue was brought up and all Babergh members voted against it, but we were actually outvoted by Mid-Suffolk. And as a result of that, we've got to go away and find members to sit on particular task groups. And I just sort of feel that maybe going forward, members, certainly on both sides, ought to be aware of, these joint overview and scrutiny meetings, how the chair is perhaps going to deal with these issues on the one that came up.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dawson. Councillor McLaren?
Thank you, Councillor Dawson. Can I just clarify with you that 1.5 related to the previous meeting and you are discussing about the second meeting? Yes, where we had a split vote in relation to a task and finish group. I believe that task and finish groups should be very focused and benefit residents, and at the end of the exercise we shouldn't be saying so what. I think we as a committee, joint committee, should think carefully about creating a task and finish group. And you're quite right, the joint committee was split on that vote at the last meeting. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor.
Well, not really, because going forward, this...
Councillor Dawson,
yeah.
Can you please come through the chair?
Sorry.
I think that was a good explanation, Councillor McLaren, and I think that's answered the clarification there. Thank you.
Not quite.
Right, no other clarifications. I'd like to move on to item 9, Councillor Appointments, and 9A, to consider whether to confirm or not the vote of no confidence in the Chairman of Licensing and Regulatory Committee. And Council is asked to consider whether to confirm or not the vote of no confidence in the Chairman of Licensing and Regulatory Committee proposed by Councillor Maybury and seconded by Councillor Nunn at the Licensing and Regulatory Committee held on the 11th of June 2021. I would like to invite the Monitoring Officer to introduce this item.
Chair, can I just check that everyone can hear me, as has been the custom this evening to check? Oh, that was a bit of feedback. Is everyone okay? Thank you. So, in accordance with Committee Procedure Rule 4.1, a vote of no confidence in the Chairman of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee was passed at the meeting of the committee on the 11th of June 2021. The motion was carried by 5 votes to 2, representing more than 2/3 of the committee members present at the meeting. 3 committee members were not present. Committee Procedure Rule 4.2 requires that the full council now determines whether or not to confirm the committee's vote of no confidence. This is a vote by simple majority. If the council confirms the vote of no confidence, Councillor Newman will be removed from the position of Chairman of Licensing and Regulatory Committee, and the council will be required to elect a new Chairman of the committee. If the council rejects the vote of no confidence, Councillor Newman will remain as Chairman of the committee. Chairman, I would now like to provide some guidance, if I may, to councillors on this vote, as this process arises so infrequently, and I want to be sure that all councillors understand the voting process. Councillors, if you agree with the vote of no confidence and want to elect a new chairman of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee, you should vote for the motion. If you do not support the vote of no confidence and want Councillor Newman to remain as chairman of the committee, you should vote against the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I would now ask the Corporate Manager Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote to confirm the vote of no confidence in the Chairman of Licensing and Regulatory Committee is now showing in blue. If you'd like to cast your votes, please, councillors. Thank you. Councillor Lindsay, can I take your vote, please? That has voted. Okay, thank you. Councillor Malvisi, can I take your vote, please? Or is it still going through? Thank you. And Councillor Beer, I'm still waiting for yours. Okay, can I take it manually then, please? Against. And Councillor Beer? Oh, it has. Okay. Councillor Beer, can I take your vote, please? Oh, no, sorry, it's just come through. Okay, so the voting is for the vote of no confidence, 12 votes, and against the vote of no confidence is 16 votes. So that vote of no confidence was lost.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. The vote is lost. Thank you. I'll now go on to our next item, which is 9C, appointment to outside body Suffolk Joint Emergency Planning Policy Panel. Could I have a proposer to appoint Councillor Ward as the council's representative on the Suffolk Joint... Oh, sorry, Councillor Hinton.
Can I first clarify whether this appointment...
Can't hear you.
Planning.
Can't hear a word.
Can't hear.
Can't hear.
Can I confirm whether or not the candidate for this appointment has to have completed the joint emergency or the emergency planning colleges in York's training programme to qualify for this position?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not aware that they do, no. They will undertake some training, but I'm not aware if it's the training.
Mr. Chairman, it's just obviously some conflict here because certainly when I had that post about 8 years ago, I had to have taken the training before I could take up the position, and I believe Councillor Mabry's in a similar position.
Oh, have you had the refresher
course? Councillor, well, I will clarify that and come back to Councillor Ward if he's appointed tonight.
So could I have a proposer to appoint Councillor Ward to the council representative of the Suffolk Joint Emergency Planning Policy Panel? Thank you, Councillor Arthey.
I'll propose Councillor Ward, and if he needs training, I suggest he should have it.
Councillor Jan Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also, knowing Councillor Ward, he will make sure he's very familiar with the subject that he's dealing with. Thank you.
He's good at dealing with disasters, aren't you, John?
I will now ask the Corporate Manager Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now showing in blue if councillors would like to place their vote. Thank you. Chair, that is 23 for and 5 abstentions. So that is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very remiss of me, and I do apologise, but I should have declared that Councillor Mark Newman is duly appointed as the Chair of Licence in the Regulatory Committee. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mark. 9D, to note the following appointments. Council was asked to note the appointments to committees as detailed on the agenda.
Councillor Plum's going to stand up.
Oh, Councillor Plum.
I just want to absolutely clarify that the new member on the Planning Committee has had all the up-to-date training that the rest of the committee has received in the last 2 years. And if he hasn't, when will it be done so that we can have him as an active member of the Planning Committee? Thank you, Chair.
I'm not aware of the...
Chair, can I just come in there? So Councillor Barrett will be appointed to Planning Committee. He has undertaken planning training in the past, but we will get that done as soon as possible and definitely before he sits on the next committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I won't change his mind.
What do I need to go on to next? Item 10. I'll now proceed on the agenda for item 10, motions on notice. And I'd like to ask to consider the motion of notice received from Councillor Hinton. Councillor Mabry.
Not to have to agree that Councillor Melanie Barrett will be joining us on Overview and Scrutiny, or is that just taken as read, please?
Chair, can I just confirm?
I'm not aware of that.
So, sorry, I can just confirm that because the appointments were notified to the monitoring officer, she has used her delegations to be able to appoint in between, so council are just noting those 2 appointments. For outside bodies, it's a council appointment when we do need to vote, so that's the difference. Thank you.
May I come back, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councillor Mabry.
Thank you. At the annual meeting, we had to agree the make-up of the individual committees and those therein. So I'm a bit flummoxed. I think that's the word, that the monitoring officer has just agreed this. I have nothing against either Councillor Barrett's, but I just think we should do this as a matter of procedure, please. Thank you.
Councillor, Emily, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I can clarify for councillors that this process has all been followed correctly. Under Part 2 of the Constitution, Responsibility of Functions, I do have a delegation to implement changes to committee places between council meetings. For any councillor that wishes to look it up, or any member of the public listening that would like to look it up, it is paragraph 2.7 under Council Responsibilities. And there is a note that states any changes to membership of a committee or subcommittee can be implemented by the monitoring officer following a request by the relevant group leader and notified to the next available council meeting. This is the first available council meeting following the request from the Conservative group leader to make the published changes to the committee places. And Chair, just to confirm further, there is no change to the political balance of the committee, which is something that has to come forward to Council to be agreed. So that's where councillors may have recognised this kind of thing actually coming forward to be voted on in the past. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Emily. Right, if I go forward now to the motions on notice.
Councillor Beer.
Councillor Beer, sorry.
But sorry to prolong this, but I think Councillor Mabry does have a point. Whilst Councillor Manley Barrett on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and you're saying that this was done out of meat and by delegation powers, why did we have to vote then on Councillor Simon Barrett being put on the Planning Committee?
You didn't.
Why couldn't that have been taken out of under delegation powers? You know, why is there two different rules here?
Go on.
Chairman, we haven't voted on either of the amendments to the committee places.
Right.
As described by the Deputy Monitoring Officer, the outside body places do have to be voted on. So the position that Councillor Ward was elected to just moments ago, that does require a vote because there's no delegation in place. But we haven't voted on either of the Councillor Barrett's appointments.
So, right, then why weren't we told that Councillor Manley Barrett was going to be appointed to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee?
You were.
Because I think that's the whole point. Thank you.
Chairman, just for the avoidance of doubt, those two places and the names are published on the agenda.
Right. I'd like to move forward now with the motions on notice. To consider the motion on notice received from Councillor Hinton. Councillor Hinton, would you like to move your motion?
The motion...
Can you get nearer the mic?
Get any further, it'll probably feedback. No, it's not peppermint flavoured, no. The motion itself is within the papers for the committee, and I don't propose to go over all of that. What I would just like to amplify is the fact that the council is in danger of losing the confidence of the public by not being open and transparent in its democratic dealings with the public. We've had a fiasco just recently over the audit of electors, where it was being done electronically, having warned everybody to watch out for bogus emails. And I'm afraid the Chief Executive's response that it was publicised on the website and on Twitter is not very satisfactory when you consider that not everybody's on Twitter. I'm certainly not on it, and I won't go on it. I certainly do not sit there riveted to the Babergh website on the off chance that something might pop up. And when our own audit has said that only 60% of the population of Babergh have access to a computer, then that makes a little bit of a joke of that as a communication medium. So we are in danger of alienating the public and making them feel that they are just cash cows, if you like, supplying money to the council. It is also relevant to state that
don't think that's appropriate, Councillor Hinton.
And 2016, and I haven't gone any further back than that, questions from the public were allowed and on the agenda for the annual council meetings. Since then, I would acknowledge that we have reduced the number of meetings, and that's probably where the change in terms of questions from members of the public at the annual council meeting was slipped in. But that, in actual fact, makes it even more important that we reinstate it, because there are even fewer opportunities for members of the public to ask formal questions of the council during the course of a year. Now, we keep saying we haven't got we're reducing the number of council meetings because we haven't got enough business, etc. Well, if we make sure that the members of the public don't actually want to get involved because we make it too difficult, etc., then I'm not surprised. It is if we're going to be open and democratic about these things, we have to reinstate this provision and change the Council Procedure Rule 12 to make the asking of questions by members of the public and councillors at the annual council meeting a formality on the agenda. I would ask you to support this motion.
Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Owen. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll reserve my right at the end to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ward.
Although, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep. I don't have much objection to this motion, in fact no objection at all, although it is somewhat irregular for a motion to be written by a member of the public. However, it is far too wordy. I believe less is more for such a simple request such as this. It really needs to be short, snappy and to the point for maximum impact. And moreover, Chairman, a motion should not include the details of changes to the Constitution, which is a matter for either the Constitution Working Group or the Monitoring Officer, depending on how substantive the changes are. I'd therefore like to propose the following amended motion. This motion proposes that this Council allows questions from councillors and members of the public at the annual meeting. At the moment, questions have to be held over until the next ordinary meeting following the annual meeting, which can sometimes interfere with democratic accountability because questions may no longer be current and thereby lose their relevance. As this is a straightforward change to the Constitution, this motion proposes that Council instructs the Monitoring Officer to make the appropriate changes to the annual meeting order of business in the Constitution. And if members would like, I can email the exact text so you've got it in front of you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jan Osborne.
On the face of it, what Councillor Ward said sounds exactly like Councillor Hinton's motion, but much shorter. Is that right? It sounds as though the effect is exactly the same, that a member of the public will be able to ask a question at the annual meeting, but for some reason Councillor Ward's amendment seemed to be much shorter than the original motion.
I think that is correct. Yep.
But the effect is the same?
The effect will be the same.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arthur. Councillor Hinton, do you accept this amendment?
No, Mr. Chairman. The motion may seem wordy, but anybody who's had a look at the Constitution, they will know that it is so wordy that it is designed, in my opinion, to allow people to drive a coach and horses through it to mean whatever they want to mean. So I think that I would like to stick with my own wording. Thank you. Yeah. Even though, as Councillor Ward has said, he's effectively has nothing against it, why change it?
Yeah, I agree.
Councillor Ward.
The change is essentially around how the Constitution is amended, and that it's for either the working group or the monitoring officer to do that. And in this instance, I'm proposing that the monitoring officer makes the appropriate changes to the Constitution rather than being directed by a specific text in the motion.
On that, the Constitution belongs to the members of Babergh District Council, not the Constitution. It belongs to all the members of Babergh District Council, and any changes have to come back to this full council anyway. So why don't we just sort this out here and now? Why is everybody trying to make a meal of it or trying to bury it in the long grass?
Yeah. I'm sure that's not the intention. If you are not approving the amendment, then we have to go for debate, and that will be on the amendment to start with. Yeah. Councillor Busby.
I suspect none of us have got our constitutions here, so it's going to be very difficult to identify what words need to be changed and what don't. I mean, surely the simple reason behind this is that we would like the public and members to be able to ask questions at all council meetings. Isn't that it?
Yeah.
Can we not rely on the monitoring officer to make the amendments to the Constitution that covers that sentiment? I think we can.
I tend to agree with you. Can I ask the monitoring officer? Oh, Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a copy of the Constitution with me, if anybody would like to have a look at it.
Oh, you're such a girl, Carl.
30 copies.
Emily, would you like to go into that? Yeah, yeah.
The Chairman's just asked me to comment on the process for amending the Constitution, and I'm grateful to the comments from Councillor Busby about his confidence in my ability to amend your Constitution. And indeed, that is the normal practice. Either amendments are proposed by the Constitution Working Group, and that's normally if they're quite substantial amendments, or if the Council indicates its will to insert something into the Constitution, it can give me a delegated authority to then craft the actual provisions of the Constitution and make that come alive. For example, the provisions that I was asked to draft and insert to enable the Council to meet virtually during the COVID-19 pandemic. So Chair, either route is possible, however it is custom and practice for a change such as this to be delegated to the monitoring officer to put into practice. Thank you.
Fine. Councillor Ward, have you anything to add to monitoring officer?
From what I don't have anything to add. From what I've said and from what the monitoring officer has said, covers everything. Quite honestly, it's a simple and straightforward way to get this change made to the Constitution in time for next year's annual meeting.
We need to go to debate then on this. If nobody else has got comments, Councillor Arthey.
Well, yeah, it's no disrespect at all to Councillor Hinton to agree with Councillors Ward and Busby that the monitoring officer is probably the best person to put the right words into our Constitution for what Councillor Hinton is seeking to achieve here. And I think we're all clear what it is, and that is that we can have questions at the annual council meeting. So I think the amendment is a sensible one, actually. I would rather have the Constitution written by a monitoring officer than by Councillor Hinton. Thank you.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Councillor Hinton.
Well, based on what the monitoring officer's just said about if council decides they want to insert something into the Constitution, then we can insert this. If the wording needs tweaking a bit, then presumably the monitoring officer can use her delegated powers to tweak the wording without, and keep it so that it's in line, if you like, with the rest of the Constitution. I don't see the problem there.
Councillor Hurren and then Councillor Barrett.
Chairman, can I just ask, if our monitoring officer amends the Constitution, surely it then comes back to Council to agree what she has written? Is that correct?
Chairman, not in a circumstance like this. If the amendment was approved, then the discretion is left to me to determine the exact wording, but it would be then circulated to all councillors. So it wouldn't come back again for further approval. There wouldn't be a need. I would just simply be acting on the will of the council.
Well, I think, Chairman, I'm happy for the monitoring officer to do it, and if she doesn't get it right, we'll amend it again. Let's leave it like that.
Thank you, Councillor Hurren. Councillor Barrett.
Would I be correct in assuming that the leader probably took advice from the monitoring officer for his amendment?
I think that's probably a fair assumption, Councillor Barrett.
So we'd probably get a very similar agreement from the monitoring officer second time round. So we might as well just go with the amendment by the sounds of it. Yeah.
Councillor Parker.
We're coming, sorry, it might just seem to go to a vote so then we can move forward or back.
Absolutely. Councillor Parker.
Thank you. Yeah, Okay, can you hear me? Right. I'm just wondering, Chairman. I think I'm right in saying that up until 2016, We always had that option, didn't we, to vote at annual council? So if that's the case, have we got any... I mean, council must have had a reason to have changed things way back when. I mean, to avoid this sort of ping-ponging back and forth, have we got any notion of why it was changed back then?
Well, I haven't. In all the years that I've been on council, I cannot remember questions coming up at the annual meeting. Councillor Emily?
Chair, I'm afraid I can't add any detail in response to that question. However, I'm sure it'll be logged as part of the review of the Constitution that was undertaken in 2016 and then implemented in 2017, which of course was undertaken by the Constitution Working Group.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Councillor Carpendale.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask if this would also apply to extraordinary meetings?
Apply to extraordinary. No.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, we were just arguing over who got the opportunity to respond to that one. Extraordinary meetings are called for a single purpose, so the other kind of procedural matters that appear on standard agendas don't apply to extraordinary meetings. So this wouldn't automatically be inserted into an agenda for an extraordinary meeting of the Council.
Councillor Mabry.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to ask the leader whether...
Can't.
Someone's... Now, we've muted it. I've been thinking mute.
Somebody's muted it for me. Can you hear me now?
Only just.
I'm just trying to inquire of the leader whether he's put forward an amendment just to Councillor Hinton. I understand that an amendment to a motion means that it will be a motion from the Conservatives rather than from the opposition. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Okay.
Councillor Creswell.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Busby. Councillor Creswell.
I'm here.
Just have a vote. We should just have a vote on the two, the amendment, Councillor Hinton's proposal and Councillor Ward's proposal, because we all agree that that's a good idea, and it's just a matter of getting around it, because we all agree that questions should be allowed at annual meetings. So we're just going around in circles about the same thing, really, aren't we?
I'll have to just do it. Yes, well, you're absolutely right, Councillor Creswell. And as Councillor Barrett has already alluded to, I think we'll go to the vote on the amendment, please, as we've debated most of this already.
Thank you, Chair. If you go to the item to consider the motion, we have now entered to agree to the amendment to the motion on notice proposed by Councillor Ward. That is now showing in blue for councillors to place their vote. Thank you.
Shouldn't drink so much.
Councillor Newman, are you able to vote, or can I take... For the amendment, okay. Okay, thank you, Chair. The voting is 24, 7 against and 1 abstention, so that amendment is carried.
Thank you. And I suggest that the monitoring officer looks at this. Yeah. So I need now to vote on the substantive motion, which is as just pointed out. So can we go to the vote, please?
'24, sorry, not 24. Yeah.
There were more than I thought.
Okay, so we're now going to vote on the the motion as amended by Councillor Ward, and that so it will be to agree to the motion on notice received by from Councillor Hinton, but now it belongs to Councillor Ward as the substantive motion. So that will now show in blue under that item.
Can you just clarify the voting position?
Yeah, so it reads to agree to the motion on notice received from Councillor Hinton, but now including agreed amendment, and that is now in progress. So you're voting for the substantive motion as tabled by Councillor Ward. Councillor Newman, would you like to place your vote manually? Or, okay, thank you. And Councillor Malvesi, we haven't received your vote. Are you able to? Oh, it's just come through. Okay, so that is 27 votes for, thank you, and 1 abstention.
Thank you. So the substantive motion is carried. I've been asked if we could have a small break by Councillor Arthur, and I think 5 minutes would be ample. Thank you. Thank you, members. I hope you've had sufficient time for your comfort break. And I would now like to continue now with the recommendations from Cabinet. 11A, Belle Vue Park, Sudbury Facilities and Entrance, Part 1. Chairman, I would like to invite Councillor Ward to introduce paper BC 21/10 and to move the recommendation in the report. Councillors, we will remain in open session unless you wish to debate the information in the appendices B and C relating to the timetable and costs, which are confidential. If this is the case, please can you indicate to me and I will move to exclude the public from the meeting whilst the discussion takes place. Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Can you hear me? Good. On behalf of the Cabinet, I am pleased to present Report BC 2110, Belle Vue Park Facilities and Entrance, following its approval by Cabinet earlier this month. We're not here to discuss the sale of part of the site and the house to Churchill Retirement Living, as this is now a matter for the planning process, and it would not be appropriate for any of us to comment about it now. Similarly, we have already decided that we would like to see a welcoming new entrance to the park with cafe and toilet facilities funded from the sale to Churchill. Both these decisions were made by Cabinet on 11th of March. The purpose of this report is to seek Council's approval and addition to the capital expenditure programme of the scheme to create a retaining wall, a new high-quality, secure and accessible park entrance, and new cafe toilet block facilities to Changing Places standard at the Belle Vue Park site in Sudbury. It also seeks approval for forward funding of essential works by borrowing until the sale to Churchill has completed. We need to join up work streams and timelines as far as possible to coordinate works as the two sides of the site align during development. The forward funding will enable the Council to progress on that basis and minimise the duration of works and disruption on site. As stated in option 2.1b of the report, we will be able to commission a multidisciplinary professional team to support and deliver the stakeholder and community engagement and detailed design work, surveys and investigations, planning application, principal contract procurement, contractor procurement, liaison with the retirement living developers professional team, and construction delivery within the required timeframe. These works are likely to cost in the region of £80,000 to £100,000. And although no physical works will start on site in respect of the retaining wall until planning permission is secured by Churchill and the contract with the Council is completed, the pre-work does mean that construction can commence in accordance with a programme agreed with the purchaser, i.e. within 3 months of contract completion. To clarify, it is this amount for which we are seeking forward funding and not the full investment amount of £1.12 million. We have committed to spending all of that £1.12 million receipt from Churchill on the park to deliver further improvements in addition to the new entrance, all of which is in accordance with the ambitions of the Council's approved vision for prosperity for Sudbury. We have also set up a stakeholder group, the Belle Vue Entrance and Facilities Group, which includes the Town Council and County Highways. This will enable stakeholders to have input into the design and thereby deliver an acceptable scheme in planning terms, ensuring that the park will be a great asset for the town, residents and visitors. This group has been fully informed of our plans, particularly the need for the retaining wall to separate the two sites due to the significant difference in land levels resulting from our need to excavate to create an entrance that is compliant with accessibility requirements. We expect to be in a position to present the detailed design for the entrance and plans for other improvements to the park at a public engagement event in the park in late summer, early autumn. Appendix A of the report shows a schematic of what the entrance could look like from various perspectives. I must stress that it does not imply designs for any of the elements depicted. The Cabinet has reviewed the benefits against key risks at its meeting on 5th of July and is satisfied that the scheme demonstrates Babergh's ongoing commitment to investment in Sudbury and delivers multiple benefits for the community and visitors to Sudbury and Belle Vue. I would like, therefore, to propose the recommendations at paragraph 3.1 and 3.2 and ask for a seconder.
Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Holt, thank you.
Second that, please, and also reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Holt. Oh, Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Can everybody hear? Sorry, did you want to come in there, Mr. Peter? No. Okay. So, if I may, Mr. Chairman, it occurs to me that actually the recommendation in 3.1 and 3.2 are actually two separate items, and they are requesting two different things of council this evening, and they're not necessarily codependent, in my opinion. So therefore, Mr. Chairman, it seems to me to make sense to debate and then vote on each in turn, if that's possible to do. In any event, I would like to also propose an amendment to 3.2 at the appropriate time. But in the first instance, I'd like to inquire as to whether we can take each item in its turn, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Have I a seconder for this? Councillor Arth. Oh, Councillor Hinton. Councillor Hinton, thank you. Second. Then, yes, I'd like to go straight to the vote on this, Councillor Parker. Yeah. I will take these separately. We don't need to vote on that. Thank you. Councillor Ward, sorry, Councillor Ward.
Just clarify for Councillor Parker and others, 3.1 is voted against, then 3.2 becomes irrelevant and we can't proceed with it. Unfortunately, we need to approve the capital programme allocation before we can commit to spending any of that for 3.2.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
If I can respond to that, Mr. Chairman, I don't actually think that that's the case at all, because I'm sure it will come out in debate that there could well be other funding sources available.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Busby.
Thank you, Chair. I'm somewhat confused as to why we need 3.1 at all. At the joint cabinet briefing on the 12th of July, it was reported that the capital programme, we had £4 million earmarked to Belle Vue, and because we felt we only needed 2 million of that, we were going to release the other 2 million. But we still have £2 million, I believe, in a budget or in a capital expenditure programme. Why do we need to approve an additional 1.12 million?
Councillor Ward.
Yes, Councillor Busby, that is in the outturn for the 2020 to 21 financial year. That outturn goes to Cabinet on Monday for approval. Until then, that carry forward does not exist. Yeah.
Meeting?
Yeah.
Very well.
We need any further clarification?
Councillors, the Chairman's just asked me to clarify. The Chairman's agreed to take each of the recommendations separately, and that includes the debate and the vote on each of the recommendations. So you will start by asking questions and debating recommendation 3.1, and then there will be a vote, and then you will do the same for 3.2 separately. Hope that's clear for everyone.
Everybody happy? Right, then I shall go for questions then. Questions on 3.1, please. Have I any? Councillor Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just wait for the microphone to... Can people hear me now? Yeah, great. It's a question, really. If this council votes down 3.1, will we be in breach of contract with Churchill, and can they sue us? Thanks.
No.
I have an officer here, Fiona.
No. It comes, just keep talking.
Yeah, it did. If you don't approve 3.1, there could be other ways to fund the scheme, as Councillor Ward has pointed out. And actually, Cabinet have already resolved to divert the capital receipt. So we would need to work with the Council's financial team to see how that capital receipt could be properly allocated if it's not approved tonight.
Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're discussing authorising the financing of this, as what we're referring to in these papers. Is that correct? And my question is, and I won't go into any details on the pink pages, but my question is regarding the low wall, the retaining walls, the retaining wall and the temporary retaining wall. My question is, if we spend money now on repairing them, improving them, replacing them, or whatever it is that we need to do, and I'm referring more to the one on the Cornard Road, although I realise the ones at the front may have to be money spent on. If we spend money now, a year, 18 months down the road, are we likely to find that this was wasted and we've got to either knock down bits of this or knock a hole through that? Because quite often we agree to these things and then a year later, oh, well, we need to knock a bit out of that. So can I be assured that if we repair or retain the wall or walls, they're not going to be affected later by the development?
Councillor Holt.
No?
No.
Yes. Councillor Beer and everyone else really, you all had a, I believe, CC to you, which I sent to Sudbury Town Council. And I draw your attention to a section in there, and I'll read it out. These design, plan and feasibility works are likely to cost, as Councillor Ward has already said, 80 to 100,000 for the whole scheme. And whilst I can confirm no physical works will start on site in respect of the retaining wall until plan of permission is secured by Churchill and the contract with Churchill is completed. The pre-work, which is what we're discussing here, does not mean that construction can commence in accordance with the programme agreed with purchaser, i.e. 3 months. So it cannot. The work, no, sorry, I'm getting tongue in. The pre-work does not mean the construction can commence in accordance with the programme agreed with the purchaser, i.e. within 3 months. So the focus here is on the pre-work. We're not going to build a wall. We're not going to build an entrance. This money is to do the pre-work feasibility design for the entrance. It's no wall, Peter. There is no building, no construction going to commence until the planning permission, if it's granted, is granted at planning committee, and that's if it's granted.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this is feasibility work, pre-work, pre-commencement work that will only kick in once and if planning permission is granted.
Thank you. It's cleared that point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Holt. I'd just like to say that probably, as all councillors are aware, you can ask as many questions as you like on this, and then in debate you'll have speak once for 3 minutes. Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a new microphone. Is it working?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. I would like to suggest to Councillor Holt that it's a bit presumptuous of him to say that there will be no works taking place, because if a structural engineer comes in and actually looks at the site and declares something unsafe, then there will be constructional work. And this is what concerns me, that the 80 to 100,000, which you have declared to the public, will be spent. It may well be an awful lot more because you don't know what's there. You do not know what is needed until it is being reviewed by a proper structural engineer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Holt, would you like to respond to that? There are questions, but...
All I can say, no work on the entrance or the wall will commence until planning permission is granted, if that is the case. This is all pre-work feasibility study work. Fiona, have you got anything else to add to that? Because I'm not sure you can add much more to it, to be fair.
Yeah, it's probably worth just clarifying that the retaining wall that we are referring to is the one between the site that Churchill will be purchasing and the new park entrance. And that retaining wall is required largely because of the levels differences we are seeking to create to enable the park entrance and to make it disabled accessibility and to deal with the levels difference that already exist actually within the site.
May I return?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman? May I return?
You can return, yes.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Hinton and Councillor Parker.
Thank you. My return is I stand by what I have said. You do not know when you're looking at a site, particularly since our officer has declared that there is a difference in levels, that there may not be some remedial work that needs to be done. And this is what concerns me. There has been no estimate for anything in that structure. I would suggest that the council re-looks at this and actually puts a figure in case remedial work is needed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Hinton, a question, please.
I hope this thing's going to switch on eventually. Yeah, we're there. One talks about the council approve the addition to the capital expenditure programme of the council spend of up to 1.12 million. But Councillor Holt is talking about 80 to 100,000 pounds. Why the vast difference in funds? Especially when he says no construction work is going to take place. This is all about planning and investigations, etc. And yet 3.1 talks about retaining walls, cafe blocks, shower, toilet blocks, and the whole caboodle. Why do we need 3.1 at all?
You don't.
Councillor Holt or Councillor Ward?
It is customary to put provision in the capital programme for major capital expenditure. This, we do it all the time. And therefore, we're putting in a provision for the full amount which we're going to spend of up to £1.12 million, which is the receipt from Churchill, because we've already committed to investing the whole of that in the park. So there is a placeholder in the capital expenditure programme up to that value. However, until we get, or Churchill gets, if they get, planning application, only the first amount, the pre-work amount of between 80 and 100,000 pounds, only that will we require forward funding for. We will not be seeking forward funding for any other aspect of the work in the whole of that capital programme, including all of the various construction elements. Does that help clarify?
Because normal procedures, and I'm sure the Chief Executive will pull me up on this with his legal background, etc. But normally when you're selling a piece of land or a property or something like that, the contract's exchanged, and that was done on the 5th of May, but there was no completion date set. And even if the contracts are completed, they could still have a reservation in them which says subject to planning permission. So all this preamble and all the rest of it is completely unnecessary.
Completion will take place following planning approval. There will be no further. The contract will not be completed until planning is secured, and that is part of the agreement with Churchill. So there won't be a completion and then pending planning. It'll follow planning.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Question.
Of course, that assumes that that planning does come, but nonetheless, we're straying into debate and crucially straying into debate on item 3.2, and of course we are discussing 3.1. So a question, if I may, The recommendation in 3.1 is predicated upon approving the addition to the capital expenditure programme of 1.12 million and includes within the recommendation there at 3.1 of the new cafe toilet block facilities. And yet, I think it's around about section 6, it says that at the time of writing, the cost of providing the new cafe and toilet block were not available. How on earth can you ask us to approve an unknown cost of the capital expenditure plan?
Councillor Holt?
Can you hear me all right?
No, carry on.
I'll carry on. It's usual practice to create a budget for a new capital scheme that hasn't yet been subject to detailed cost analysis. The detailed design and detailed costing work will come at the next stage of development. That's usual practice.
Councillor Creswell?
After hearing Councillor Busby's talking about 4 million going down to 2 million and might be available as from Monday, which we don't know yet, I just find it astounding. Here we are looking to borrow 1.2 million when 2 million might be available as from Monday.
Question,
it just
please.
doesn't make any sense.
Question, please. Councillor Grandon.
Well, Chair, the question is, what is the 2 million that we have already got reserved, carried forward from last year for this year's expenditure on Belle Vue, and why can't it cover the 1.12 million? Does it matter? It's mine.
At the moment, that carry forward does not exist until Cabinet has approved it.
Oh, crikey.
No, but what does exist is 4 million in the reserve.
No, that's in
the programme.
That's in last year's budget. It's not in this year's budget.
Catherine
I mean, can't you see that it's very convenient that the figure we're looking at is 1.12 million, which, well, the one thing we will guarantee is that the total cost of the works will not come to 1.12 million. That's all that we're getting as a revenue for the sale of the site. Well, that won't be the cost. We don't know what the cost of the cafe is yet. We don't even know whether we can fit one in. We don't know what the cost of the toilets are. We don't know really the cost of the work. We've made estimates on them, but they could be 10, 15, 20% out, 50% out. We just don't know what they will find when they do survey work on the old swimming pool site. It's, you know, could be anything in there.
So, is there a question?
Yeah.
No. You think about it.
Catherine Graham.
Okay.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask a question to see whether I have understood things correctly, please?
Can you please speak up?
Can you hear me?
No.
Oh,
good for a second.
Can I ask a question? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Thank you. Can I ask a question to see whether I've understood things correctly, please? The 80 to 100,000 pound figure that was quoted earlier by Councillor Holt, was that, did I understand that that is like a bridging loan almost for professional fees and that kind of thing, or have I misunderstood?
Basically, yeah.
In many ways, yes.
That would be along the right lines?
Yes, it's forward funding for us to enable that work to be carried out until such time as planning permission, if it is granted, and then the capital receipt comes in to the council, and at that point onwards, that money would then be paid out of that capital receipt.
Thank you.
Councillor Parker.
Chairman, just a further question, please, if I can, related to 3.1. Why is the failure of either the developer to gain planning permission or indeed ourselves to gain planning permission for the proposed new entrance not even recorded as a risk on the risk report?
So the top risks have been identified in the report. There are, of course, many other risks associated with the development of this sort. The third risk, I think it is, on the table, the retirement living developer withdraws and does not complete. One of the reasons they might do that is if they fail to get planning consent. That's written into the contract. So that particular risk is already built into this risk identified.
Yes, sir.
Because, with due respect, what we're discussing here is the entrance, not the retirement. Councillor Ward already said we're not discussing the Churchill retirement scheme. So my question is what if Babergh District Council don't achieve planning permission for the new entrance? Why is that not on the risk report? It's a significant risk.
Because at this stage, the actual decision being requested is allocation of funds into the capital expenditure programme. There will be obviously further work that is done after the design work has been completed. And as been pointed out, it is at a fairly early stage in this process.
Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions. I'm happy to ask one now and then one later. My first question is, considering we've heard from Councillor Ward that the 2 million may be available as from Monday, is this paper, i.e. is this recommendation of 3.1 not premature? We should have waited.
I was going to say that.
Councillor Ward.
Well, no, and we have to. We had to proceed on the basis of a council meeting this month. This council meeting was actually delayed from earlier in the month, right at the beginning of the month. We need to make provision based on what we have, the facts we have available now. That capital allocation from the 2020 to 21 budget was a leftover for general works on Belle Vue. We're specifically looking here at the receipt from Churchill and what we intend to do with that in terms of specific works on our park entrance. And so we just deemed it sensible to, for the sake of openness and transparency, to have a specific item in the capital expenditure programme that allocates money for this purpose.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
I think, yes, it's working. I'm sort of coming to this and I'm sort of getting, a bit bored, really, because we should be going around in circles. It strikes me that we probably could have not had this whole paper discussed, because clearly in Monday we're going to have £2 million, which is going to be available, and presumably that would be then put into the capital programme, and you draw down on that to achieve the reasons for the decision, which are 1, 2 and 3. So we seem to be discussing something which is inevitably going to happen anyway, because it's already been allocated in previous things, and the fact that it isn't in the capital programme until it's approved, and then Monday it is approved because it goes to Cabinet, and Cabinet are unlikely to...
Is that a question? Is that a question?
Yeah, the question is, can we defer this until Tuesday, and then we can obviously go home? Because it's 7:45. I've been here since 5:30 and we're going round in circles, and I'm getting rather fed up with this. That's my question. Do you want my attention? Because at the moment you're not getting it.
No. Councillor Owen.
They've said exactly what I was going to say about deferring it. All of them. Margaret, Simon, why are we talking?
Yep.
We should be deferring this.
I think, sorry, the question, I think this has been badly presented, actually.
Yep.
Could you tell me why it's been presented in this way when you don't need to present it, because quite honestly, you've got the decision on Tuesday?
Councillor Ward.
And I propose that we actually defer this. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yep, I'll second it.
Councillor Beer. No, we can't defer.
Well, can we get to a vote, because we need to do something? This is absolutely, this is very poor drafted document, I'm afraid. That's a question. I'll put everything as a question, then it's a question.
Well, it is at the moment, yeah.
Why can't we defer?
The drafting of the document is based on the need primarily for 3.2, the forward funding provision for the preliminary work. I'm quite happy if you wanted to defer 3.1 or leave 3.1 out of it, reword 3.2 so that we can approve the forward funding on the basis that the Cabinet decision on Monday ratifies the carry forward from last year to the current financial year, and that forward funding is taken out of that carry forward. We still need 3.2. We need to proceed on that basis. So this council does need to approve that.
Could I ask our monitoring officer to clarify that particular thing with deferment?
Thank you, Chairman. There are a number of procedural rules that may be of use to the Council at the current time. Under Rule 15.1, you have the list of motions without notice. Subsection G is to withdraw a motion. So the proposer and seconder could withdraw their motion, or indeed other members of the Council could propose that that's the case. Or you could adjourn the debate on this particular item under item K, and remember we are talking about 3.1 at present. The alternative, as I think Councillor Barrett was alluding to, is any member can ask the Chair to put an item immediately to the vote.
Fine.
What was that?
Councillor Parker.
Thank you. Before Chair thinks about doing that, can I ask, if all of this is the case, then why on earth was this presented? I have some sympathy with what Councillor Barrett said. This is a muddle. So why on earth was this presented to us this evening? And secondly, presumably it was presented to us this evening because it's a significant spend, surely. And so can it actually just be deferred to Cabinet? Surely it's got to come back to Council if we're talking about approving an expenditure of 1.12 million, surely.
Yep.
The paper was first presented to Cabinet on the 5th of this month and approved there for onward recommendation to Council to approve the insertion into the capital programme plus the forward funding element to allow those preliminary works to take place. It is a council decision to do that. It is what it is, I'm afraid, Councillor Parker. I mean,
Fine. Okay. If there's no other questions, well, Councillor Parker, question.
Well, I was just going to respond to Councillor Ward on that point. So he's agreeing with me that regardless of whether Councillor Barrett wants to defer this for Cabinet, that can't be done. It's got to be a decision by Council. Is that correct? And with due respect, Councillor Ward, at the beginning of this debate, you did say that these two items were entirely dependent upon each other. It turns out they're not.
Exactly.
I think
Can I ask our monitoring officer, Emily?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to clarify the reason that the decision is being presented to the Council rather than the Cabinet, and that is because this spend is not within the agreed budget as set by the Council in February. Therefore, the Cabinet cannot take a decision that's outside agreed budget or agreed policy. Hence, the capital spend needs to come forward to Council to be approved to be entered into the capital programme. Thank you.
Councillor Busby, a question?
Question to Emily is, what spend isn't within our control? Are we talking about the 1.12 million? Or are we talking about the 100,000 that we need to spend in advance of planning? Because I think the 100,000 probably is. The key question is, are we happy spending £100,000 in advance of knowing whether this project is going ahead or not? £100,000, 2% on council tax. And the contract actually says the seller shall apply for and use all reasonable endeavours to obtain all requisite consents in respect of the seller's works as soon as possible following the grant of satisfactory planning permission. So it's in the contract that we really shouldn't do anything until planning permission's received. There's a danger that we spend £100,000, we don't get planning permission, or they don't get planning permission, and we've wasted that £100,000 because we might need a totally different solution. But if we need the £100,000, then my reading of the accounts again, which may not be valid until Monday, is that in the business rates pilot, there's £177,000 unspent on Hamilton Road, Boreham Gate and Belle Vue. So the funds are there. We don't have to borrow it. It's a case of whether we're happy to spend it. And perhaps it might be wasted. It might be wasted. I'm saying it will be, but it could be. Are you happy to flick a coin and waste £100,000 or not?
Councillor Arthey.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it seems to me that Councillor Busby is addressing 3.2. You have said that we're dealing with 3.1 separately and we're dealing with that first. Can I make a point without asking a question? I don't know when you're going to move on to debate.
Well, if there are no other questions, then I am prepared to go to the vote on 3.1.
Not the vote, the debate.
Debate.
Okay.
Councillor Maybury.
Well,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is my second...
Sorry, Councillor Arthey. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Well, it depends whether Councillor Maybury is asking a question, I suppose. Yeah. Right. I'll defer to Councillor Maybury.
This is my second question that I did allude to. I would like to know, why did Babergh agree to build the retaining wall as part of this sale? Because this is where we are becoming unstuck. Why on earth did we agree to build the retaining wall? Thank you.
Councillor Holt.
I'm getting a bit fed up with this debate, to be honest, because Councillor Maybury quite should understand, as should every member here understand, that the park entrance was spoken about and brought forward through the Sudbury Steering Group way in advance of this land sale, way in advance. And this park entrance has been brought forward separately. Once that land was sold to Churchill, then a subsequent consultation happened, and it made common sense that if we were going to go ahead with this park entrance, we would have to build a wall, because we were selling the other section of land. And it makes perfect sense for this scheme to go forward in relation to doing the feasibility work so that we can abide by the contract we've gone into, and should they get planning permission, the timescale fits. If we don't do this pre-work now, and Churchill get that planning permission, we will struggle to hit our contractual commitments that we've made in the sale of the land to Churchill. Now, as I say, that park entrance was out in the public, or certainly in the steering group, way before that land was sold. So it isn't a case of we've got to build the wall for Churchill. We've got to build the wall for a park entrance, because the levels, as has been explained, need that holding wall, retaining wall. We are talking about here a park entrance to enhance the park Belle Vue for Sudbury. This park needs that work. This park needs revitalising, and this is the scheme to do it. Now, the pre-work we're on about is to enable that work to be done so that we're in a position to go forward should planning permission be granted. The 1.2 million that will go into the Capital Works programme and added to 2 million, the 4 million sat there for quite some time. It's not automatically going to be drawn down, and it won't be drawn down. We're talking about 80 to 100,000. Until we get that capital receipt in, no more work will happen. It seems quite straightforward to me. Perhaps I'm just being naive here, but I can't see why members are constantly having this argument. Do you not trust that we're going to do the honourable thing? Do you not trust what we intend to do? Is there some debate here about trust? Because if that's the case, then come out and say it, because I'm getting a little bit fed up with it, to be honest.
Mr. Chairman.
Not the argument. The argument is, or the debate is, if Churchill don't get a planning application, and if therefore we don't sell that chunk of land, do we have to put the same retaining walls up? And I don't believe you do, because the retaining walls are there to protect a 4-storey block of flats.
On a technical point.
The retaining wall is to facilitate the park entrance. It is not there as a structural solution for Churchill or anybody else. It is not there to ensure that a 4-storey building can be built. It is to facilitate the split of the land into 2 areas and to facilitate our park entrance, because we are digging down to be able to enable people to come in from the pavement into the park entrance at that point. I hope that clarifies matters.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. And we're into debate now, aren't we? So I'd just like to just say to Councillor Holt, I'm sorry that he's fed up with the debate, but this is the paper that Cabinet have presented to Council. And so if it's not been made clear, I think Cabinet needs to take a long look at itself. And I also think that the confusion, the inability for anybody, or seemingly for whoever, to be able to differentiate between 3.1 and 3.2 shows the muddle that we're in. So if we can deal with 3.1, which is requesting the capital addition of, or the addition to the capital expenditure programme of 1.12 million, just to come back to your point, Councillor Holt, I don't think any of us have got an issue with the fact that Belle Vue needs to be improved. The issue that we've got here is that we have got absolutely no guarantee that we will ever receive that capital receipt. I'm quite sure that we will, but we've got no cast iron guarantees that we're going to receive that 1.12 million. Now, if that's the case, we will end up bearing in mind that the entrance has been designed or alongside the planning permission, alongside the development that has been approved by Cabinet. The entrance has been designed alongside that. So if the receipt for 1.12 million never comes forward, we will have spent up to 1.12 million pounds creating an entrance that will turn out to be, alluding back to Councillor Beer's point earlier, we will have built an entrance that is irrelevant to the development that would then have to come forward, Councillor Holt.
Well, it should be written to Sudbury Town Council. No work will commence on that site until planning permission is granted. You're basically trying to say that we're going to build it anyway and spend 1.2 million.
With due respect, Councillor Holt, with due respect, Councillor Holt, that's exactly what you said was going to happen in the Cabinet meeting on the 5th of July. You said you would be developing an entrance, a park entrance, whatever.
Alternative sources of income might be able to be gained. Alternative sources of income.
In that case, we don't need 3.1.
Yes, we do.
Councillor Lindsay. I have questions from Councillor Lindsay, Councillor Creswell, Councillor Hinton, Councillor Mabry and Councillor Osborne.
Sorry, Mr Chairman, are we in debate or are we in question?
Well, we seem to have drifted into debate. I keep asking the thing, keep to the question.
Can I suggest we go into debate, because we've spent long enough on questions and we are going round and round. So can I suggest we now go into debate? Clive wanted to start the debate off, and then after a few minutes, can I suggest that we go to the vote, because we're just going round and round in circles.
I don't agree.
Is that the opinion of the council?
Just go into debate.
I take it from the wife.
Clive?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think that's actually quite a good idea, because I think the meeting is starting to lose its structure.
Absolutely.
What we've been having sounds a lot like debate to me, but with people being able to speak multiple times, which is not what's supposed to happen. The point I was going to make was simply about 3.1, because we're dealing just with 3.1, and I don't think 3.1 is a muddle at all. The paper is about what we propose to do, and the whole point is that we have said the Churchill capital receipt is to be used in full on Belle Vue Park and entrance. So it's absolutely no coincidence at all that 3.1 is asking for approval of that amount as an addition to the capital expenditure programme. It should be in our capital expenditure programme because it's what we plan to do. And in order to spend that money, it's capital and it has to come out of our capital expenditure programme. So I'm happy with 3.1 splitting from 3.2. I think that most of the points that have been made are about 3.2. I don't think there's any question at all about 3.1. I think that we should approve it now.
Absolutely. Councillor Lindsay, is this a question? I shall only now be asking for the questions. And as Councillor Arthur has alluded to, we've already strayed into debate. And, you know, if we're going to get this over, if there are no other questions, we'll just go into debate and go to the vote on that, on 3.1.
It's been answered. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Creswell.
Right. Right. First of all, I'd ask a question to Councillor Holt. When Councillor Holt said it was discussed with Sudbury Steering Committee, I wouldn't say it was discussed. I said you came there with your officers and it was a bit like a dictatorship. I'm not going to lie. They came back with things that you told them that was going to happen. There was no debate between the Sudbury Town Councillor and yourselves. You came down there, you already had the answers. So, and as for standing there and saying a 4-storey wall is conducive, no, it's not. It's to hold a 4-storey building up, as Dave Busby said. Let's be honest about things. Let's stop telling lies. Let's be honest with the public.
Chairman,
Thank you.
Chairman, if I could intervene at that point, I'm not comfortable with councillors accusing officers of lying in a public meeting. That's not appropriate. It's a contrary to the Code of Conduct in relation to officer-member relationships. Perfectly reasonable for councillors to hold robust views and to do so with each other. But please can I ask councillors not to stray into the suggestion that officers are lying. Your officers do not lie to you. Your officers give you their facts and their opinion and their advice. It is for you to make decisions based upon that advice and guidance, and you can follow it or you can not follow it. But do not, please, accuse officers of lying or trying to mislead you. That is not what they are doing. If, as has happened here, an officer has made it very clear to you that the works that are proposed are nothing to do with the construction of the building that is not even been granted planning permission yet, but is to do with the construction of an entrance which Cabinet have approved, then that is the case. If you wish to take that outside of the meeting with myself as Chief Executive, then I'm more than happy to do so. But as I repeated before, do not accuse officers of lying, please.
Could I come back?
Certainly,
I'd also like to come back and just say that Councillor Creswell, I believe, is not a member of the steering group, so I'm not quite sure where he's getting his information from.
I can respond to that because I speak to the person who was on the steering committee and they went in there and it wasn't dealt with in the right way. I'm sorry what you might think.
Councillor Malvesi, and question, and then I was left to determine 3.1.
No, debate.
Councillor Malvesi.
Under Procedure Rule 15.1, can we have the question and can we move to the vote?
If I could just assist, that is indeed a valid motion without notice. You do need a seconder and you need to vote on that.
I propose that we move to the vote under 15.1.
No. Councillor Barrett, seconded. Thank you. So I shall go straight into the vote now on 3.1.
No, you need to take a vote as to where to move to the vote.
Yeah, so I need to, yeah, I'm sorry, thank you, Arthur. I need to go to the members to decide whether we will vote on the motion that's gone through.
Chair, can we just have a hands up for putting it straight, for putting 3.1 to the vote rather than going through the voting system? So if hands up for all of those in favour of going straight to 3.1 to vote. Chair, that is carried. So we're going to vote on recommendation 3.1. Councillors, that is now showing in blue. And if you go to the vote and place your vote, please. Thank you. Chair, can you make sure that you vote? Oh, okay. Chair, we have two members who I believe have left the meeting, which is Councillor Beer and Councillor Newman. So the votes are for 11 and against the 3.1 recommendation, 14, 1 abstention. So actually that recommendation is lost.
Thank you. Thank you. The recommendation is lost on 3.1. Shall we now go forward to 3.2? So we need to, Councillor Parker.
Chair, I'd like to propose an amendment to 3.2, if possible.
Yes, certainly.
Would you like the wording of the amendment?
Yes, please.
So the amendment for 3.2, that Council authorise forward funding of essential works by borrowing until the capital receipt is received to enable the commissioning of a multidisciplinary professional team to support and deliver the stakeholder and community engagement and detailed design work, surveys and investigations, planning, principal contractor procurement, liaison with the retirement living developers professional team, including party wall matters, within the required time frame. Any such borrowing should only be considered once existing reserves or other sources of external funding have been exhausted.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Have I a seconder? Councillor Holland, do you wish to speak? Okay, we'll go straight to questions on 3.2.
Have a vote on the amendment.
Oh, Councillor Ward. Sorry. Do you accept the amendment?
Only if the word reserves is taken out of it. And I'll explain why. It is true that reserves can be used for capital programme, but that would deplete our reserves. We cannot use the capital receipt to replenish the reserves that we have used. Capital receipts can only be used for capital expenditure or to repay borrowing. So it can keep the other sources of funding, but take out the word reserves.
Councillor Parker.
Before I accede or otherwise to that, Councillor Ward, can I just ask, because I think Councillor Busby mentioned it earlier, in your papers on Monday you'll be discussing the forgive me, what's the name of the fund? The Business Rates Pilot Scheme. In which there sits according to the papers that you'll be looking at on Monday, there sits £186,000 of funds that have been placed there specifically to be spent at Hamilton Road and also Belle Vue. So the question is, I mean, I hear what you're saying and I understand that the capital receipt can't replenish the reserve, but why does it need to? Why do we need to borrow? If we've got 186,000 and Councillor Holt tells us that we need to spend between 80 and 100, we've got the money. If a reserve is a rainy day fund, is this not the ultimate rainy day?
Available for further work in Sudbury, and that's what that retention pilot fund was for. But if this council's will to use that and deplete that fund so that we can do less in the town, then...
But with due respect, Mr Chairman, if I may, with due respect, you are expecting a capital receipt of £1.12 million, which you can use for other projects in the town, can you not?
We've already made a commitment to spend all of that on the park. If you wish us to divert some of that to other projects instead, again, happy to consider that. That's all.
Councillor Hinton.
Thank you,
Councillor Ward, sorry.
No, Councillor.
Councillor Ward, just for clarity, is the amendment as proposed by Councillor Parker accepted or not? I think the answer is not. I heard the subject to, but I didn't hear Councillor Parker agree to that.
I'm not if the word reserve is still in there. I just wish that word was taken out, and then I'd accept the amendment.
So, Councillor Parker, are you happy to remove the word reserve? Or
I think it's regretful. I think it's daft, but yes, Chair, I'll happily remove the word reserve.
In which case, then the amendment is accepted, so there's no need to go to a vote on it.
So, are we going to go to questions and debate? So I shall now ask for questions, which obviously you can have as many as you wish, but the debate will rely on allowed for 3 minutes to speak by each member. And can I just remind councillors that not to preamble on a question which will end up as a debate. Thank you. Councillor Lindsay.
So I think, members, colleagues, I think that's better. Obviously, there's not a lot of point in me going on. The decision has already been made, effectively. But I did want to ask the question why we entered into a contract with a private developer that committed us to borrowing 100k before we had any guarantee that it would be that the development would go ahead.
I'll answer it if you don't mind.
The 100,000 isn't for the commitment to the developer. It's for pre-design work and feasibility associated with the park entrance, the cafe, the new toilets, and the retaining wall. So there's a bit of design work that needs to go out of that 100,000 towards the retaining wall, which, as I've already explained, is actually to create the new park entrance. So it just happens to be that the developer needs to have the two sites split in order for them to complete the sale. So it's less about retaining and more about splitting the two sites.
Councillor Hinton.
Can I come back, Chair? Or?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are we working again yet, or are we still on peppermint paper? Yeah. Quick question, really, and I'll skate around it a little bit because it comes out of the pink papers. There is nothing in the timetable in the pink papers to say when the Churchill are likely to be putting in a planning application, and also within there it says sill preparation, cafe toilet towards October 2021 round submission. So there's funding being sourced from there. How much money do we need for this entrance to
Councillor Hinton, you are going into the pink paper, which is confidential. So please refrain from that question.
Why are we sourcing money from lots of different places for the same thing? I'm not going to be vague. Or attempting source?
Is that, yeah, when you say attempting source, we have a capital receipt hopefully coming of 1.12 million. If we are able to get further funding in addition to that, then obviously we'd be reckless if we didn't do so as a council. If we're able to get funding for various parts of the park improvements, then we will do so. On top of that, what you end up with then is possibly some capital left over that perhaps we can do something else with in Sudbury, because not only did we commit to putting that totally into the park, but we also said if there was anything left, and I believe if John can correct me if I'm wrong, that it would be spent in Sudbury. So if we're able to get grants, if we're able to get other funding, that will just leave more money to be spent in Sudbury. And I don't see anything wrong with that. So, if we can't get the grants, if we can't get any additional funding, that capital receipt will be used for the park.
Now, my understanding was that the capital was used for the Belle Vue Park and Sudbury, and obviously this development won't qualify for SIL. So if you apply to the SIL fund for extra money, you're effectively robbing other parts of the district of potential infrastructure spending. How is this equitable for the people of Babergh?
No, actually, I don't think. John, but good try. I don't think that's quite right, but good try.
The SIL funding are you referring to?
It's in the pink papers.
If you want to go into the pink papers, Councillor Ward, we'll go into the pink papers and I'll talk about it.
Do you want to?
But I've been told that I'm not to be specific about things because of the pink papers.
Do you want to enter confidential session?
Well, you can see the papers in front of you the same as I can.
If you want to enter confidential session.
I don't think we need to. I think the SIL funding is in reference to the total project. At this point, we're only looking at the 100,000, which is the pre-spending before the planning application is approved or not.
Councillor Plum.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to propose that we move to a vote. Hope someone will second me on that.
I haven't finished questions yet.
No, I'm asking a question.
Question. Councillor Lindsay and then Councillor
No, I was just seconding the proposal.
You're going to second that? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can't we start the debate?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Councillor Maybury's been waiting for some time to ask a question here.
It's
Well,
ridiculous.
I shall ask Councillor Maybury now if she'd like to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Patience is always a virtue. My question, the biggest question here is, why on earth did Babergh agree to sell this piece of land without getting the contribution from the developer to actually build this entrance? That's the biggest question. It's the question that's never been answered, and it probably, without any shaking of heads, it really does need an answer. In normal terms, a developer comes into a parish, and I'm going to use the town as a parish. They wish to do certain things, and we are always asking what a contribution could be. I know we sold the piece of land, but surely we should have been forward with this, thinking, okay, in relative terms, they are not paying that large amount of money for that site. So why were we not asking for the entrance to be built? Because the retirement living is not going to attract any affordable flats, it's not going to attract S106, and it's not going to attract any SIL payment to the district. So that's the biggest question, and it's the question in the room that has never been answered, or perhaps even asked. Thank you.
Are there any responses here?
I think Councillor Holt referred to this earlier. The park entrance was designed before we went out to market on the other site. Whilst the contracts exchanged in May, the park entrance had already been designed at that point, and it is something that the Cabinet have approved because it's what the Cabinet wanted to do for the park. So the current entrance to the park doesn't have to be replaced. There is already another entrance, admittedly not facing the town, but this entrance was something that was discussed long before the site was put on the market. I think it's not a debate that I particularly feel I can answer in terms of why Churchill weren't asked to contribute. The Churchill scheme hasn't been through planning yet. They haven't submitted a planning application yet. So that feels to me like a planning question.
Right, thank you for that. I'm proposing to go forward to get the vote on whether we go forward on the amendment.
I do believe we're voting on Councillor Parker's amendment. Well, I was the seconder to that, and you did ask him if he agreed the rewording, but you didn't ask me.
I do beg your pardon.
No, that's fine, Chairman. I do agree. It's common sense. I just like things to be in order. I think we've seen enough embarrassment. This is the worst debate I've ever attended, to be honest. So let's get it right on the vote, please. Thank you.
Chair, I just want to raise your attention to the fact that we do have a motion on the table proposed by Councillor Plum and seconded by Councillor Lindsay, which is that the question now be put. So the Council does need to vote on moving directly to the vote on the amended motion. And Chair, I'd suggest in the same manner as we did previously that the Council can indicate their approval or otherwise by show of hands.
The point being that we haven't started debate yet. I mean, Councillor Lindsay has proposed that it be, and we haven't even had the debate yet. All we've had is questions.
Well, yep. Sorry? To take the motion.
If Councillor Arthur wants some debate, I will allow it. I'll withdraw seconding the move to a vote.
I'll withdraw it, but let's have something relevant in the debate, please.
Right, Councillor
Not
Arthur.
going back over history.
Thank you, Councillor Plum.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's only right that we have debate. I think we look a bit silly if we have just a few questions and then we move straight to the vote. I wanted to make a couple of points, really. One of them triggered by what Councillor Hinton said when he said he understood the receipt was going to be spent on Belle Vue. I think he's right, and I think we all understood that. So how 3.1 was lost, I've got absolutely no idea. I'm glad that Councillor Parker has accepted the changes to the amendment proposed by Councillor Ward to take out the reference to use of reserves. And the reason I'm pleased that he did that is because if you put together the vote for 3.1 and the original amendment for 3.2, we would have a situation where we were flying in the face of the decision we made to spend the receipt from Churchill on Belle Vue Park. We would effectively be saying, no, we're not going to let capital receipt go into capital and put it into our programme for work on Belle Vue, because we've just had that vote. And then we'd be saying we're not going to spend any of it on the preliminary works either. That's going to come out of reserves. And I think that is completely contrary to what we have previously agreed, and I actually think it's completely contrary to what most people actually want.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other wishing to speak on debate? 3 minutes. Councillor Lindsay.
Since Councillor Arthur wanted a debate, I'll give him one. No, not really. I think the issue that sort of bothers me is we're just going straight for, this is 3.2, so we're talking about borrowing. We're just going straight to borrowing, and it does say reserves in other sources of funding in there, but I just really want to emphasise that, or ask perhaps, you know, where it mentions somewhere in here about seeking other sources of funding. But if we want to improve a public open space in our largest market town, where's the research, where's the bidding from public bodies that specialise in just that? I mean, you've gone to the LRF for 500k, but that's the money to enhance development, not to enhance public space. So I really want, there's nothing in this I can see that shows we've been to English Heritage or National Lottery Fund or anywhere like that to get money to spend on a public space for the people of Babergh. I don't understand why we've got to go straight into borrowing money to do these I understand it's pre-construction works, but I don't understand why we have to, why we're not seeking money from funders that actually want, whose goal is to create and improve public open space. Thank you.
Councillor Lindsay. Anybody else wish to speak to the debate? 3.2. Councillor Parker, any final comments, please?
No, none from me, Chairman. Thank you.
I'll ask Councillor Creswell first. Sorry, question. Debate.
All it is, Chair, I'd like the motion in its, when it's been amended, to be read out again so we all know exactly what we're voting for, because since that was read out, we've had a lot of debate, or a lot of questions, and I think we might have lost track where we were with it. So I think it would be a good thing for it to be read out again.
Good point, Councillor Creswell. Could we have the amendment read again, please?
Chair, thank you. So the amendment, as I have it, is that Council authorise forward funding of essential works by borrowing until that capital receipt is received to enable the commissioning of a multidisciplinary professional team to support and deliver the stakeholder and community engagement and detailed design work, surveys and investigations, planning, principal contractor procurement, liaison with the retirement living developers professional team, including party wall matters within the required time frame. Any such borrowing should only be considered once other sources of external funding have been exhausted.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other? Councillor Parker, would you like to add anything to the amendment? Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, it's certainly been an interesting debate this evening. There have been quite a few technicalities which I know we seem to have struggled with, which is unfortunate, and for that I apologise. But it has been a very technical report, unfortunately. Now, I know that some people don't approve of our plans for the site and would like to stop them in the hope that an alternative could be found. However, we have looked at many options for a new entrance, and this really does represent the only viable one. It is something that can be delivered and, crucially, funded, rather than a pie-in-the-sky scheme that would never see the light of day. The combined projects retain and protect the house and deliver the improved park entrance that our exhibition and consultation in January last year showed that the public rightly wanted to see. Not to do something and instead give in to the small but vocal number of objectors would be to do a great disservice to the town and its residents. It would mean yet another delay in renovating the park, and it could be many years before this council summons up the will to make another attempt. I hope, however, members have been reassured, and not just that it's a worthy project, but that we have planned it well, we have considered the financing, and planning permission pending, it has every chance of success and being a wonderful showcase for the town. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Members, I'd now like to go to the vote, and unless Councillor Hurren has anything to add before we go.
Amendment gives everybody a chance to do the right thing and for the Cabinet to come back with better worded proposals, and I'm confident that we can all do that. That's all I have to say, Chairman. I shall be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Hurren. We're very close to the guillotine on this, so I would like to go to the vote now.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in blue. If councillors could vote as soon as possible, please. Thank you. I'll let you know in a minute.
It's 8:30. All right. Can I ask councillors if they wish to extend the guillotine past 8:30, so we only have a minute? Could I have a show of hands, please?
It's simply to enable the vote to go through because it's being processed. So we won't keep you more than probably another minute, but it's just to make sure for procedural completeness.
Sorry.
And our councillors want to make sure that we're procedurally correct.
Thank you, Chair. I just have now got the voting through. So it's 21 for, 3 against and 1 abstention. 3 have left the meeting. So that is actually carried. Thank you.
Yeah, so that amendment is carried, and thank you very much, councillors. What else have we got to go on here? 11A. All right. Well, that concludes the meeting with that debate and questions, which seem to all roll into one. However, the next meeting will be on the 21st of September at 5:30, and I'm hopefully going to have to, or hopefully our officers will be able to have our meeting at our Endeavour House chamber. However, it is not, it's entirely up to the way this COVID regulations go. So thank you all members for attending, and thank you for your input into the debates. Thank you.